We're coming up to the Ask a Question headline. Are there any NLPers in the room? NLP practitioners? Great. Well, you would know then the power of questioning. When you ask a good question, you get a good answer. It's impossible to ask a question and not get a response, isn't it? Very famous ad. Do you make these mistakes in English? Does anyone know this ad? Maybe it's just me. I should get out more. Now, you can take this and use it for your own business. Adapt it to suit you. Do you make these mistakes with your coaching business? Now, how this one works is that it feeds on curiosity. It's like, do I do that? Maybe I do. I should check this out. Even if you're an expert on something, it's hard to go past this because you're thinking, I'm missing out on something, and no one likes to be left out left in the dark. So that's how this particular principle works. Oh. You need to tug on the heartstrings, I'm afraid, with advertising. Nothing is sacred.
That's right, 12 years.
Now, this is not particularly relevant to speakers, but the reason I've put that in is because if you look at magazines, you know, you go down to the newsagent and you check out all those titles, you look at the headlines that they use to promote the magazine on the front cover. They are experts at doing really good headlines because they know that that is totally why people buy that magazine. And they also know that the power of the free offer, just harking back to the earlier points I made, that when they put like a product like a lipstick or a blush brush or something on the front cover, they outsell the normal editions 4 to 1. So the power of free offers is not to be underestimated. This is the What Everybody Ought to Know headline. Who reads long copy anymore? Now, this is an industry jargon term, but long copy is something like this. It basically means there's just lots of it. And there's a real movement in the advertising industry at the moment about people don't read long copy anymore. And I would absolutely disagree, because if it's of interest to you, you will read it. And a really good story to demonstrate that is a chap called Max Hart, and he owned an advertising agency, and his copywriters were always giving him long copy. And he said, don't do long copy anymore. Nobody reads long copy. Can you just stop it? And his copywriter went to him and he said, you know, Max, I reckon I can get you to read a 3-page letter based solely on the headline. And Max said, yeah, right, sure. So the copywriter went away. He wrote 5 words on a page. He gave it to Max. Max read it. He said, I rest my case, you're the winner. And do you know what was on that page? The truth about Max Hart. And that just demonstrates the point. When it's of interest to the reader and it's got a big benefit in there, people will read it to the very last word. So long copy works if it's relevant. Now, this ad is what everybody ought to know about, and it's educational. It's like, maybe I should find this out myself. And the next ad I'm about to show you is a very famous award-winning ad in Australia, which you may have seen. It doesn't use the same headline, but it uses the same format in terms of layout, and it's completely inspired by this ad. So Bankers Trust won a swag of awards with these ads. Does anyone remember them? The fact that you can remember it after about 10 years, that's how old they are, it says something about the quality of the ad. And how long are they? They're educational. Very specific market, wouldn't you say? This is an e-book. You can adapt this to suit your business, what everybody ought to know about sacking employees, what everybody ought to know about superannuation, what everybody ought to know about antidepressants. You can add a twist with this and add some urgency and get a real kicker along so people actually respond to it much more readily than they would have normally. What everybody ought to know about sacking employees before sacking them. What everybody ought to know about superannuation before June 30. How many ads like this did we see just recently? A whole stack of them. What everybody ought to know about antidepressants before taking them. So we're moving now on to the number 5 and 6, which is the lists and the numbers headline. Now this principle works on brevity and conciseness, and that if you know what you've got in front of you, you will read it. If it looks like it's going to go on forever, you may not be that interested. So the myths and the fairy tales and all those Brothers Grimm knew this principle quite well. The Three Little Pigs. Add a twist to that, the true story of the Three Little Pigs. I didn't know there was a true story, but nonetheless, it makes it a little bit more interesting, doesn't it? It adds a bit of a kicker to it. I think we all know these. Add a twist, the Millionaire's 10 Commandments. 7 Deadly Sins, add a twist, Snow White and the 7 Deadly Sins, whatever they could be. And then you make it really specific. This is a book, The 7 Deadly Chess Sins. Who's into chess? No one. Oh, a few people. Yeah, would you read that? Yeah. And here's a more recent ad, the 50 crucial answers you need. How Australians can grow their retirement income. So they've actually used the how-to headline as well as one of the lists headline. So once you get used to this sort of stuff, you can start to mix and match your headlines and use one as the main and use one as the subhead. And of course, who could forget? Now you can adapt to suit yourself. 101 ways to become a professional speaker. 3 powerful reasons why you shouldn't buy diamonds from a retail jewellery shop. Top 10 ways to save on your mobile phone bill. Now these are the sorts of headlines you'll see a current affair use and Today Tonight, because they know that that sort of lowest common denominator works. So you don't need to pitch your ideas too high. In fact, a friend of mine worked for a current affair for a long time, and Peter Meakin, who was the executive producer at the time, said to her, pretend you're writing for 12-year-olds. And that's what they do. Tips. This is to build credibility with the numbers that you choose. Use a naught, 10, 20, 30. And if you want to make people remember what you've been saying, add an odd number. So 3, 7, 9. You rarely see even numbers used with this type of formula. And moving on to the last, the target market headlines. These are really basic. They're very straightforward and anyone can use them. And they're very, very, very effective. And they use these certain words like wanted, attention, warning. Okay, because they're designed to stop you in your tracks. Here's the first one, a very famous ad. This is a true ad. This is what he used to source his fellow adventurers. He was inundated with responses. Attention, VCE parents. It's not dissimilar to yours, Sasha. Same sort of principle as a very specific market. And what's interesting about this ad, which has only been in the paper probably the last month or so, is if you look at the subhead, it says, they laughed when I brought my student to the free VCE Success Special event, blah, blah, blah. It's quite a long subhead. That was inspired by an ad written 80 years ago. Here it is. They laughed when I sat down at the piano. Same principle. So this stuff works. It's been used since the 1920s and it continues to be used today. And this ad worked, well, the Attention VCE, because it started off about this big in the age and it grew and it grew. So you know when ads grow over a period of time, the ad's working for that advertiser. Wanted, sales speakers. Who's seen that ad before on the back of the Speakers magazine? When I joined National Speakers, I remember reading that from woe to go. Now, I'm not in that particular target market, so it wasn't relevant, but I read the ad. Just very simple, isn't it? Wanted, sales speakers. You can adapt these to suit you. Property owners, 5 things you need to know before you buy inner city apartments. So any financiers and mortgage brokers in the group? Perfect headline for you guys. Any single men in the group? Any single women? You should get together. Are you tired of spending New Year's Eve alone? So there are the 7 formulas. There are about 20, but I've just summarised them and given you the top 7 tonight. So let's go through them one more time. The how-to, the here's how, learn how to, ask a question, what everybody ought to know, lists and numbers, attention, wanted, warning. I've got a handout for you too, which you can, I'll give to you later if you need it.